Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Listen Enable podcast. And let me start off by saying it's been a few weeks since we've been in the studio together. And Dylan Alcott, congratulations.
Thanks, mate. What for?
I get to what for? Isn't it great to live a life where there's so many things you do that are worthy of praise?
Well, I didn't know if it was something I've done that is good or some smart aleck comments coming.
Well, that is fair, especially that relationship. But no, it is a huge congratulations on the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Hey, thanks, mate.
Came and watched you as the narrator.
What do you reckon?
I thought it was awesome.
It was pretty cool, wasn't it?
It's a very bizarre show. I'm glad and not glad. Part of me wishes I'd researched what the show was, and then part of me was like, what a ride.
Yeah, I didn't tell anybody who was coming what happens, but also kind of come in raw and don't do the research because it's confronting in a sensory overload kind of way. But yeah, mate, I thought I was just going to read out a couple of lines of dialogue and get out of there, but I was singing and dancing and
you were
going for it.
It was awesome.
It feels like a lifetime ago, but bits happened since then. But yeah, mate, it was very cool.
Congratulations.
What do you think of me and my fishnets?
Yes, that is the ending. Unexpectedly funny.
Yeah,
I know most of your puns that are coming. People heckle you or heckle people on stage, and I knew some of the responses just because you've got a good little wheelhouse of gags, and we've known each other a long time. And yeah, did not expect the fishnets.
I did see you get a bit turned on at the end.
Well, you were the one raising your eyebrows at me, and I was laughing back at you.
I did catch you, which is always good when you say
I had a bright jumper on.
Big love to everyone that came. We were pretty much sold out the whole time, so I appreciate it.
I bring up the stage work because our next guest is also very familiar to a microphone, stage and audience. She's with us today, joining us all the way from Sydney. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Hey guys, my name is Loz Booth. I'm an actor, stand-up comedian and content creator. I was born with a hand and foot difference. It's called Ectrodactyly, which means that I have missing fingers and toes. I have two kids. One son actually has the same condition. However, he has just one small finger on each hand. And all my work that I do in comedy, content creation and acting, I focus on normalizing differences. And my main mission is to transform the landscape of Australian TV to promote greater inclusivity.
Love that. It's also just great to chat to another acting chum, two actors just...
No, I don't want to bring up Neighbours, mate.
Just you and I, just a couple of professional actors
I
talking
did a speaking role in
industry.
Neighbours. You know I was Stingray's friend.
Yes, you're a Stingray's friend.
Well, I don't know if you realise this, Dylan, but we've met before.
We have met before. I was trying to think about where it was.
We met on set. So I actually have a bit of a bone to pick with you.
Hit me.
This is fantastic.
Because you were quite aggressive towards my fake baby on set.
Ooh.
I was standing next to you in Bump.
That's right.
I had the pram and you were like shaking the pram. My baby is quite distressed still, my fake baby.
How's the fake baby going now?
Yeah, it's getting a lot of help, to overcome the PTSD of you shaking the pram. Lots of therapy. It's been very expensive.
One thing I did realise about when we were acting on Bump is like real babies on set. They're like not as our babies, but like they're actor babies. They work hard, and you have to have like two different babies, and they get swapped in and out for like health and safety reasons. And like it was we had someone there looking after the baby. It's like a lot goes into it.
I just want to say for Amelia, can you cut out the word fake so it does sound like Dylan just shook a pram with a real baby in it, please? Unless people are hearing the word fake now, and Amelia did not take that direction.
Yes, thank you.
And we don't have a chance to cancel Dylan.
Yes, good.
To be clear, the pram was completely empty. There was no baby in there.
There you go.
Just getting into the role, Angus. Just getting in the role.
Yeah. Well, Dylan practiced on my child. And, poor Billy, my 7-month-old, he still talks about that day. Yeah. Doesn't even speak.
Doesn't speak yet.
Loz, you wear a lot of hats, as you said in the intro, but you also mentioned your disability, limb difference. Were you diagnosed at birth and with your particular? I didn't even want to attempt it, but I do have it in front of me. Ectrodactyly.
Ectrodactyly, which a comedian asked me yesterday. It sounds like a Greek food, which is about right.
Yeah.
So I never had a diagnosis when I was a kid. My doctor. When
they better say your baby daddy. I was like, hang on, what is going on? Whoa.
Baby's in the brain, clearly. No, my family doctor never had an explanation for it. I was always just told that it was just one of those things that when I was in the womb, I just didn't finished developing. And it was just one of those things. It was only until I was about 38 that I was actually told what the condition was, and then was able to look into it a lot.
Did you find out what it was because your child also had it? Did you know that it was going to be hereditary and genetic?
I had no idea. So I have 2 kids, as I mentioned, and my oldest is now 11. And when we had his scans, I guess in the back of my mind, I was thinking, can this be passed on? But he had all 10 fingers and all 10 toes. And at that point, I just thought, okay, cool. Like, it's obviously something that is not going to be genetically passed on. But I found out that it could be passed on 50-50 when I fell pregnant with my second son. And I went in for my 12-week scan. And because it was my second child, I went in there by myself. You know, it's not a big deal. Second kid doesn't really matter. You just go through the motions. And it was when they were doing the scan that we noticed he only had 2 toes. And then further investigation, we found that it was likely he only had 1 finger on each hand. And that's when I was pulled into the head sonographer's office. And he said, this is what the condition is called. This is what, this is how your son has been impacted. And at this point, you need to decide whether or not you're going to continue the pregnancy.
I've referenced sonographers twice on this podcast. The first one, my first child, Indy, and the language used in that office with my partner and myself, where the idea of, both times as well, more recently with my son, congratulations, you've got a healthy baby. And I quoted this on the podcast with my second child, 10 fingers and 10 toes, congratulations. It's actually in a previous episode of me saying exactly that. I recognise being part of the, disability community and hopefully people recognise and see me as an ally, but I knew that language is wrong. That's the language that, I would say most people dream of when they go into that room with some fear and trepidation about the health of their child. What was the language used for you, Loz, as somebody who didn't get the experience of congratulations, 10 fingers and 10 toes?
In all honesty, it's a bit of a blur, because when you go in and you just think you're going for 12-week scan, it's going to go for 15 minutes. What started off as 15 minutes, the scan ended up going for a whole hour. And I was there by myself. I was confused. I was upset. And I was numb, to be honest. So when I was pulled into the head sonographer's office, it was very, very different from what I expected. You don't even, you were mentioning about that language that was used when you had the scan. It was very, very different. It was quite negative. It's, looking back now, I truly can't believe that I went in for a scan and then I was being told, you need to decide whether or not you're going to continue with this pregnancy. And I think that there should have been more counselling at that point, because I was by myself trying to take in all this information. There were so many emotions and feelings. I felt guilty. That was one of the hardest things. I was by myself, and it was honestly, even now, it's really hard to talk about, because the months after that were the hardest in all my life. What I went through trying to decide what we were going to do. I mean, terminating the pregnancy was never an option, but we still didn't know what else could be wrong, and you just don't know. And then you feel hypocritical because I have this condition, and how could you be considering that? So the conversation was very, very negative. It's funny because since then I found out that that is the common practice after you have a scan. If there is any difference in the child, or if there's any abnormality, they actually do have to say to you, you need to consider whether or not you're going to continue or terminate pregnancy, which just blows my mind.
That sucks.
Yeah, I had no idea about that.
I didn't know about that.
Speaking of that experience that you've had, that your son is going through, will go through, and will lean on you for your lived experience, is it tough? Like, it's relatable and you're together and there's going to be this like bond and kinship because, you've got the same experiences and you can share laughs. Oh yeah, this happened. Oh, that happened to me. But then there's also going to be moments where that your life was different because of that limb difference and that, visual aesthetic in a place, in a playground at recess or whatever that is. And you kind of know that these things are coming for your son. Is there fear in you just because of not him and who he is, but what the outside world is?
In all honesty, the only fear that I have is what has created my mission, which is changing inclusivity on Australian TV screens. My upbringing was very normal. My parents were very much about treating me the same way as my siblings. And I think because I was treated in that way and I wasn't, given extra attention, I grew up to become like a really, really confident kid. And that confidence really helped, I guess, protect me in the schoolyard. I was never bullied because nobody would attempt it because I was just super outgoing. And I really wasn't bothered by my difference. I was just super confident. And, there was a time when I was a baby and I was trying to do something and my grandmother was, he was super smothery. He was like, oh, let me help you with that. And my dad said, no, just let her figure it out herself. And I have brought my son up in the same way, where even when he was at childcare, I would say to them, if he's trying to do something, let him attempt it so many times, and then you can step in and assist him, but don't help him do it the whole way, because it's just building up that independence. And because he has been brought up the same way as I have, he's just as confident. He has so many friends at school and like he's just super happy-go-lucky. He's just the most lovely, outgoing kid. But the only way like that I've really, really, I guess, been impacted is that when I was 16, I wanted to perform. I was always doing drama. I was in theatre groups. But at 16, I realized that there was no inclusivity. This is the 90s, right? There was no inclusivity on Australian screens. And so I gave up on my dream and just kind of lived my life. And now at the age of 44, seeing that, I can really make an impact on TV screens, that I look at my son, and that is the one challenge that he's going to have as well, is that he's a real creative type and he's super outgoing. And I don't want him to go through the same thing I did. He's lived his life super confident and he's never been impacted by his difference, but he will want to go and do something creative as well. And is he going to look at the TV and go, well, there's nobody like me on TV. I'm going to give up on my dreams as well. So I'd say both our upbringings have been, great because we've had so much confidence, but it's as an adult, it's as, at that point when you want to go and chase your dreams, that it's going to, that I am worried that he's going to look at TV screens as theatre and he's going to go, well, there's nobody like me.
I also just quickly want to acknowledge before we move on, it wasn't fair of me to assume that you had some bullied upbringing, and I hope you understand that I didn't think that. I was kind of leading towards questions, but just wanted to put that out there that, it's not fair for me to presume that his life is going to be some sort of idea that some people might be thinking.
And you're right. Hopefully we are getting a bit more inclusive in society. But back in the day, I had trouble with my disability.
I do have a question. You have on your right hand 3 fingers. Is that, and then on your left hand, is it 4? Do we count them like that?
Depends on what you consider a finger, because some are like, I use this in my comedy because it's kind of like, I don't really know. So I have 3 fingers on my right hand, and kind of 4.5, let's call it 4.5 fingers on the other hand. So there's nobody like me that has the exact hands. It's kind of similar with this hand, but I had a lot of operations when I was younger they got rid of 1 extra digit here. I was in hospital a lot when I was a baby. But I have 3 toes on 1 foot and 2 toes on the other foot.
Are there advantages to having, your particular grip, hands, fingers? Have you noticed anything that, your partner, son can't do that you can?
Well, I'm definitely better at texting. This hand is a really good texting hand because his thumb is super long. So this is great for texting. I don't know what my son can do better than me, but I'd say that he can do anything anyone at his age can do. He plays a piano. He has started learning the violin, which is hilarious because I say he plays more with his whole body than the actual instrument. There's a lot of swaying going on. But
how does he hold the bow if he's got 1 finger?
Just under, he's just hooks it, yeah.
I was wondering if he had like a different setup, like some kind of splint or whatever, but he can do it. Yeah.
Little handle.
No, he doesn't. Look, he's never going to be the world's best violinist, but
Most
I love
enthusiastic, you can.
exactly. Do you know what? Like, I love it. My whole thing with my upbringing, his upbringing, is to give him as little aids as possible so that he can figure it out. The only thing that he has is that he has special scissors. But when it comes to the violin, a lot of parents might say, look, no, let's not do the violin. Let's try and figure out another instrument that you can adapt better to. But he was so excited about the violin. I'm like, buddy, you go for it. Like, go and make a racket. And if you like love it and this is what you want to do, amazing. Like, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out as we go. It's like tennis as well. I didn't know how he was going to go with tennis racket, but he loves tennis. And a little shout out to City Community Tennis in Sydney. They actually have an all abilities hub, and they welcomed Alistair with open arms, and they've actually taught him how to hold the racket. So he holds it with both hands with a grip like that. And he's brilliant. He's like, he beats me in tennis. Dylan, he said he wants to play against you one day. He played against Adam Hills. He played against Adam a couple of months ago. And so, yeah, it's just about adapting.
I'll have a hit with you, Alistair, but no mercy. No mercy, Alistair. I'm coming for you. What about when you decided to, enter the world of professional theatre, acting, that kind of stuff? Obviously, hopefully there's been a few developments since back in the day in terms of like inclusive, filmmaking. It's obviously got a long way to go, but I imagine when you first entered it out of school, it would have been pretty tough because you were a bit of a trailblazer in what you do. Can you give us a bit of a synopsis and a bit of a scope of what it was like back then, and if it's progressed at all and how it is today?
Absolutely. So I was doing a lot of theatre. I'd never jumped into TV when I was younger because I was just scared, to be honest, that I wasn't going to be accepted. There was always this undertone of, looking at my future. When I was a kid, all I dreamt of doing was going to NIDA, getting on TV, working in film. And I had a director once say to me, look, your passion is amazing, but in all honesty, your hands are going to be a distraction. So it is going to be tough. So that stayed in my mind for a very long time. And as I said, I was just looking at it thinking, well, I've got no future here and I want to go big. And I just knew that I was never going to be accepted. So I gave up on it completely. And then I guess during COVID, I started making content like pretty much everybody else that was bored and stuck at home. And that led to comedy. And that has led to realizing my dreams again and thinking, okay, I want to get on TV. I want to make a difference. I want to set an example for my son and all other generations of kids that have limb differences. And it's funny because the first time I ever stepped on set, so I've just been doing loads of extra work, like standing next to your bum. I was like, hey, make sure you can see my hands holding the pram. I was in total control and I made sure like my hands were on the table. And you can probably barely see it, but those little things.
No, I remember we were under the tree, yeah? We're under the tree with Shauna doing the speech. I remember it vividly. I was like, hey. And I was like, yo, like me. Not like exactly the same, but honestly it was. It was great.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure I can repeat exactly what you said to me, but you said, oh, man, your hands are beeping awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I said F, yeah. Yeah, I was like, get him out there. Bloody oath.
Love it.
So the first time I ever stepped on set, I had this massive flashback from when I was 16. And I had this woman from wardrobe looking after me on set because there was no AD available. And I just opened up and I told her, I said, I'm actually really nervous. Like, I am so nervous that the director, producer, someone's going to see me in my hands and say, can you just hide them in your pockets? There were legit thoughts that were going through my head because I was so scared of how it was going to be received. And this beautiful lady, her name's Texas, and she was on set. She said, no, this is what we need more of. Like, you go show those hands, you go wave those hands around, like, don't go on set like that. But just be proud of it. Like, this is what you need to be doing. And then since then, it's really given me the confidence. That first scene actually that was filmed in Bump when we're under the massive big tree, Claudia Carvin's character comes up to me in the morning and she says, good morning, Jules. and there's a voiceover that says, "Morning." And I'm holding a coffee cup and she walks past me. And I was like even talking about it now gives me chills because I'm like, yeah, this is just a small thing. Like, honestly, I want to be building up to something bigger because this is what we need on Australian screens. But for me, that was such an amazing moment. And, I had people that follow me on social media that commented going, "Oh my gosh, I saw you, like, that's amazing." And I have a lot of parents that follow me, kids with limb differences, that were messaging me going like, "This is incredible. Like, we need more representation like this on screen." So yeah, we have come a long way. We still just got, a lot further to go. If you look at, the UK, you have so many people on TV with limb differences. You got, Adam Hills, Alex Brooker, Adi Adaptan, so many people like that representing our community. And in Australia, we're just still that little bit further behind.
Do you think that you would want to go down and we'll get into comedy as well, but the comedy / representation on TV about your, difference? Do you think you would want to be doing that if it wasn't for your disability? Do you think, the acting bug would have taken over, the comedy bug would have been there? I mean, it's hard to say about a life that hasn't been lived, but what's your thoughts?
I think inside me, I've always had that, creativity, that bug, that to perform. So I believe that, who knows, if I didn't have this difference, maybe I definitely think that I would have carried on with my dream, and who knows where I would have been now. But I feel like that's always been a big part of who I am. I've always been the performer. But I realized that if I want to be a part of the change, that I also need to be creating content. So I have a show coming up. It's called Extraordinary. It's part of Sydney Fringe Festival, and it's actually a part of Limitless, which is an all abilities hub. It's Sydney Fringe Festival. So it is all accessible. Cool. It's part of 107 Redfern, and all of the shows in the Limitless hub are going to be all accessible and available for all abilities.
Love it.
When is that?
The 11th to the 13th of September. And if you go to my Instagram and go to the link, all the info is going to be there.
And we'll be sharing it.
Definitely is a lean into more diverse stories. And you actually nailed it on the top, where we hear this in advertising a lot as well. Oh, we can't cast that person with disability because it distracts from the message, or distracts from the ad, or distracts from the story. I'm like, well, don't even mention it. It's just part of it, right? So, Bump's a good example. My character Marcus, I didn't talk about once why Marcus was in a wheelchair, because it was irrelevant to the story. Marcus was just a naughty political fixer. And that's the point, but then there's elements where, like, you can write comedy or story around your disability if you're comfortable about it, like jokes about it, which normalize it or whatever. So it's about, telling those authentic stories, but it doesn't always need to be based around the fact that you are disabled. You could just be playing a character.
Exactly. I think the more content that comes out that normalizes disabilities and creates characters that are three-dimensional, as you said, so we're not just focusing on them as the token disabled character, but normalizing, I think, will really, really make a difference.
It is. We spoke to someone recently, April Lockhart, who has limb difference. She's into fashion, so she's in New York. She's pretty amazing, and she was, fashion girly first before anyone took notice of her limb difference. And so I wonder for you, because you do on your socials. Do sketches, bits, comedy pieces that are funny, and I was scrolling through them the last few days, doing a bit of research, and God, majority of them, if not all of them, are just mostly partner based, or making fun of topical stories that have nothing to do with your limb difference. While, if you're paying attention, it is noted. Is that deliberate, or the question goes, do you think you got into comedy and being funny because it was a great icebreaker because of your limb difference, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started creating content, I never meant for it to be about my difference. And this really comes back to the way that I was brought up. And I know, Dylan, like, you have thoughts and, an opinion about being disability, like having a disability and being proud of that. That I am not proud of my difference. It's not that I try to hide it. It's just who I am. So I think rather than me focusing on my content, I'm just carrying on like normal, making, silly reels about being a mum and just going, yeah, this is normal. This is me. But I have to say, it's incredible how many people get annoyed by that. Like I get trolled daily, and it's great because it gives me so much more comedy for stand-up. I love it. Bring on the trolls. But it's amazing how many people actually get upset by the fact that I'm not going, hey, these are my hands. Yeah, it's really sad. Like, feel bad for me.
Now here's a sketch about my kids.
Yeah, here's a sketch about my kids.
Like a disclaimer at the start of every reel. Yeah.
They're really upset that I'm not making a big deal out of it. And there was a reel that I did where it was about the fact that, my kids would wake up in the middle of the night, want to go to the toilet, then go on a big adventure. And I'm literally just there with a remote control, just turning on the TV. And someone said, why does she have to keep waving her hands around? Like, why is she making a big deal out of it? Like, why is she using her hands in that way? Which is great, because then I made a reel out of me doing the same thing, but holding the remote control in my mouth. But it's just an example of like people actually want you to go, oh, okay, like these are my hands. I have a really bad life. Yeah. But rather, I would want to be that person who's just super confident. And this is the feedback that I get from parents saying, like, thank you. My kids see your reels and you're just carrying on with life and you don't care and you're proud of your hands and it is who you are. And that's who I want to be.
Yeah. I think you change perceptions by just doing cool, normal stuff. It just so happens you have a disability. And yeah, online it's like people want a full synopsis of everything that's going on disability-wise. You're like, I never do videos like talking about my disability or whatever, but I'm different because like everybody knows about it now because I've been on TV for 10 years. But yeah, but I know, you know what I mean? But like I'm not doing piece to camera, so it's like, oh, today I do this. Like it's just not my vibe. But lots of disabled content creators have got great following bases, educating people, doing that, good on them. Yeah. But you need a broad range of people doing stuff. Yeah.
And we put out a lot of content. There's reels that are created from this video itself, this interview. But what I've discovered from, TikTok and Instagram has been, because I run the account, so I moderate them and don't have to moderate comments very often. But you do have, because, the algorithm might put a video into someone who's never seen any of your content, has no idea what listenable means, reads it as listenable and just has no idea what it is. And then all of a sudden they see someone, they're like, oh, what the F's going on here? Like, hey, can you not put this content on my screen? Let's say it was something more graphic about a medical situation or an accident. And then all of a sudden they're just like, this shouldn't, go back to what you were doing beforehand. I was like, you should have a look at what we've been doing beforehand, because that's all we've been doing. But someone just comes in, sees 5 seconds of a snapshot and decides that's not for them, and then they need to let you know about it. It's just such a weird wall where people just get to write whatever they feel. It's a bizarre world, but I'm glad that you get to make content out of it.
Before we get to the below uncomfortable, I do have a little bit of a briefing doc here. Did you do bodybuilding for a while as well?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
I
know it doesn't look like it
you're
now,
fit as, but like bodybuilding, what, how into it did you get, and how did you go, setting up and using the weights? Did you have any issues because of your hand, or did you just adapt?
So I decided to do bodybuilding. I was working in fitness for many, many, many years. I used to be a Zumba instructor as well.
Zumba?
Yeah, which is hilarious, can I tell you?
When I was 15, Zumba was all the rage, wasn't it?
Yeah. That was huge.
Can I tell you, when you've got a class of 80 people there, you have at least like 5 people. When you're waving, when I'm on stage waving my hands like that, they then put those fingers down because they think that meant to copy my hands.
Oh, that's funny.
It's hilarious, man.
That's pretty funny. That is pretty great.
It's great.
I'm going to burn 3 more calories by having my finger down. Woo.
They can't see it. They're like, what are you doing with your hands? Oh, okay, so I must have to.
Oh, because people at the back. That's so
great.
Good.
Yeah. Love that.
Anyway, bodybuilding. So I'd had a really horrible year, and work-wise and family-wise, kids getting sick, and I just felt really drained, and I needed a challenge for myself. And I thought, okay, I'm going to go into bodybuilding. Why not? Like, it's going to be a really intense challenge. And my philosophy and my mindset since I was a kid is that if anyone says to me, it's going to be really hard for you to do something, like being on TV, like picking up weights, then I'm driven even more to go and do it. So I knew bodybuilding was always going to be hard because if you focus too much on hand strength, you're not really working the right muscles. But I just found ways to adapt, like Alistair with the violin and, playing tennis. I had figure 8 straps so that I could lift up the weights. I always use gloves when I'm training. It just really helps with the grip a lot more. And yeah, I did really well. I won first and second in my age group and category. The medal was huge. You needed to be a bodybuilder to actually carry it. It was massive. But that's it. I did it for one season and then I was done. That was ticking off the bucket list and I was done.
When I used to play wheelchair basketball, there was a guy from Turkey had a very similar, same disability as you, but like similar hand setup. Man, he did not miss. Like, unbelievable.
Oh.
And I think...
Had the flick of the wrist.
Honestly, yeah, I don't know. And it was always incredible because, you'd think having a hand difference, like limb deficiency in your hands, you'd be struggling to, man, I can't remember what his name was. He used to dominate me. He used to kick my ass. And I'm looking at you talking, I was getting like PTS thinking about this guy. How good he was. Yeah.
You put your hand up before and Dill's like, no.
I was like, man, he's hit another 3-pointer. He's got 3 fingers. Like, he's just dominating. Yeah.
Loz, we end all of our Listen-Able interviews with a bowl of uncomfortable. It is a question that hopefully by asking this question, it makes the answer more comfortable for people who might watch this in the future. And it usually comes through from our socials.
Okay, we've got one from Laura. Laura asks, have you or your child ever been a subject of school gossip between parents? As a mother sending her child with disability to a mainstream school, next year is filled with anxiety of mine and it keeps me up at night.
Firstly, I can totally understand where the anxiety comes from. It's really scary sending a child to school. Even myself, having a limb difference and have obviously been through school, I was really nervous about sending Alistair. But when I was a kid, before I started school, my parents would actually take me to drop off every day when my brother went, just for the kids to familiarize themselves with me. And I did the same thing with Alistair, that I put him in the childcare that was going to feed into the school just so he could be around those kids for a little bit before going to school. Neither of us really had any bullying, and it again just came down to just confidence and just letting kids get on with it and building up their independence. But it is so normal to feel that way. In all honesty, it's so normal about even sending able-bodied kids to school. Like, there's an anxiety about how they're going to feel. And I think everything is always scary until it happens. Like, before sending any kid, an able-bodied kid to school, it's going to be scary until they actually start. But I think that if your child can't feel your anxiety, that is going to, obviously help them and have more confidence. But just having that child surrounded by other kids to build their confidence and also to get used to, their fellow schoolmates really helps.
And one from Tony on Facebook. I don't know if Tony's a comedian, but this is his question. There's making jokes about yourself and disability and people making jokes about your disability. What's comfortable for you and why? In my experience, it's a landmine of different opinions between comedians and disability.
Good question.
Very good question. My stand-up comedy is very light and fluffy, and I don't go for too controversial. I always think that it's a bit of an unsafe space for any comedian that is not from that community to get up and tell jokes. And I know as a stand-up community, we are getting better at obviously more inclusivity and really being careful with that. I think that for myself, someone with a disability, getting up and making jokes, even about disability, I went and did a set last night and I spoke to my fellow comedians afterwards and I said, do you think I'm almost crossing that line? Because even though I have a disability, there are so many different types of disability. And I don't want to offend someone, say, with cerebral palsy. I don't want to offend someone with another disability. So I personally don't think that any stand-up comedian should get up and tell a joke unless they're part of that community. And, it goes back to something my mentor has always said to me in comedy. If you get up and tell a joke and it doesn't feel right and it feels uncomfortable, then it's probably not the best joke to be telling.
How do you feel when comedians make jokes about limb difference?
Without a limb difference, doesn't sit well with me.
There you go.
There you go.
Loz Booth Comedy on Instagram. Thank you very much, Loz. We appreciate it. And thanks for sharing your story on Listen Able.
See ya.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.